It was a Friday night, and my friends were over for a sleepover as my parents were away from the weekend to go visit my mom's grandma. It was a long week of school and after school activities, so I didn't want to make the 2 hour drive to where my grandma lived. I convinced my parents I would be careful, and if my friends stayed with me, it would be safe. They reluctantly agreed. It was nice just to laugh and watch movies while eating a bunch of snacks. My friends and I had settled in my living room, our school worries forgotten for the weekend. We talked about typical teenager stuff like boys we had crushes on and teen shows. The atmosphere was light and carefree. It wasn't until the sun had set when one of my friends, Laura, came up with the idea for a little game that was meant to be scary, but we found it kind of dumb at the time. The task was simple: summon some kind of ghost killer clown through a ritual we found on a random website. It was those types of websites filled with all kind of old tales like the Slender Man and stories that were supposed to be creepy, but it wasn't because we knew it was just fake stories. This was meant to be a joke, a way to scare each other and feel our love for horror movies. But as we began, something in the air shifted. We followed the steps, forming a circle, chanting the words that were supposed to be nothing more than a silly incantation. The laughter died down, replaced by a nervous energy that buzzed through the room. I remember feeling silly sitting there, expecting something to happen. But then, it did. An unexpected knock at the door broke the silence, causing us to scream in unison. It was late, and if it was my parents somehow returning home earlier than expected, they had a house key. Frozen, we stared at each other, debating who would answer. It's just a prank, my other friend Jasmine said. We tried to reassure ourselves that maybe it was one of our other friends from school. I volunteered to open the door as it was my home, so I felt obligated to check and approach the door. Peeping through the peephole, my heart stopped. Outside stood a figure. We had a motion sensor porch light, so I was able to see what it was. It was a clown, but not the kind you find at a birthday party. This one was different. Its makeup was smeared, clothes tattered, a grin too wide to be comforting. Then, because the clown stood there for too long without moving, the motion sensor light turned off, and I could only make out a dark figure now. My heart pounded. It's a clown, I said quietly to my friends. They were now huddling behind me as I stepped away from the door. We were all terrified. It was just a game, right? I couldn't actually believe the ritual would work, yet here we were, faced with the clown standing behind the door. The clown knocked again, more insistent this time. It made us all jump, but we muffled our screams. Won't you let me in? I've been invited after all. The voice was chilling and mock sing-song that curdled the blood. We remained silent, frozen in fear, the gravity of our situation sinking in. We had invited something into our world, something that shouldn't exist, in a dumb game to try to scare each other. The clown laughed, a sound that was neither human nor comforting, and began to circle the house. We could hear its movement, a slow, deliberate pacing that kept us trapped in our fear. My friends and I stood in the middle of my living room now, hugging each other, just frozen in fear. The clown was toying with us, enjoying the terror it instilled. My friends looked to me, tears in their eyes, regret etched on their faces. We were supposed to be having fun, not living through our own horror story. Hours passed, or so it seemed. The clown's presence still strongly felt outside. It didn't try to force its way in, though. Not that I know of. We didn't dare sleep, our eyes fixed on the windows and doors, expecting them to burst open at any moment. I don't know why, but maybe we were just too scared, but none of us thought to call the police or even my parents. In hindsight, we should have, but let's be honest. Who would have believed us that we somehow summoned a killer clown through a ritual we found on some website? But as the first light of dawn crept into the sky, the presence faded. The dark feeling lifted, leaving us all exhausted, shaken but alive. We didn't speak of it at first, the experience too raw and too unbelievable. My friends waited until my parents returned before they left, wanting to make sure I wasn't home alone. As we parted ways, a silent agreement was made. We would never attempt such something like this ever again. What was supposed to be a joke was one of the scariest nights of our lives. The killer clown remained a legend, but for us, it was a haunting reality. There was more to just our world. In the days that followed, I struggled to return to normalcy. Every shadow and every sound made me think of the clown, and that terrified me. Sadly, my friends and I grew distant, each of us coping in our own way, but forever bonded by that horrible night. Looking back, I can't explain what happened that night, whether it was a figment of our teenage imagination or something truly supernatural. But I learned a real lesson about respecting the unknown and about the dangers of inviting darkness into your life. The killer clown, whether real or not, left its mark on all of us. I was working the closing shift at a mattress store when this happened to me. It was raining hard on a Tuesday, so there had barely been any customers at all. Because we don't get too many customers at a time, usually it's just one person working the floor. The manager usually works in the daytime in his office, but he had already left for the day as it was almost 8 p.m. My job was usually easy and involved little more than arranging pillows and occasionally selling a mattress or two. However, that night, being alone made everything feel different, more eerie than usual. As the clock ticked past 8 p.m., the drizzle turned into a downpour. The store's fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, casting long shadows across the rows of mattresses and making the atmosphere even creepier. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling by humming to the little store radio playing some pop song and organizing the brochures on the counter. Around 8:30 p.m., the door creaked open. A man walked in, his hoodie pulled up and his hands buried deep in his pockets. He was soaked, water dripping from his jacket onto the clean tile floor. He didn't say a word as he walked in, just started wandering between the aisles and mattresses. "Can I help you find anything?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful despite the chill running down my spine. He paused and looked at me, most of his face hidden by the hood. "Just looking," he mumbled before turning away. I nodded and went back to the counter, keeping an eye on him as he walked through the store. Something about him felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Minutes dragged by slowly, and the man seemed to have little interest in the mattresses. He kept glancing around and walking in circles. My anxiety grew with each passing second. I considered calling my boss of the security company but decided against it, not wanting to make a fuss over probably nothing. Finally, he approached the counter. I braced myself for a possible sale, attempting to mask my nervousness. "I need money," he said abruptly, his voice low and gruff. I was taken aback. We have some great financing options if you need." He cut me off. "No, you don't understand. I need cash. Now." His hand moved slightly in his pocket, and although I couldn't see clearly, panic set in as I thought he might have a weapon. My heart raced and my mind scrambled for what to do next. I can't open the register without a purchase." "Open it, or I'll make you open it," he threatened, stepping closer. I remembered the panic button under the counter. My boss had shown it to me, joking that it was unlikely I'd ever need it. I slowly reached down, trying to press it discreetly. "I'm not joking," the man hissed. He put his hand out of his pocket, and I saw the glint of a small knife. I pressed the button hard. Okay, I'm opening it," I stammered, fumbling with the register. It popped open, and I stepped back, hands raised slightly to show I wasn't going to try anything. He grabbed a handful of bills, but before he could turn away, we heard the sirens. The man cursed under his breath and glanced wildly around the room. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, pointing the knife at me now with a desperate look in his eyes. I backed away slowly, trying to keep a distance. "The police are coming. You should go," I managed to say, my voice shaking. He hesitated, then tucked the knife back into his pocket and sprinted towards the back of the store. Just as he disappeared, the police arrived, storming in through the front door. I was shaking uncontrollably as they checked on me before chasing after the man. It turned out he had tried to hide in one of the storage rooms, but it didn't take long for the police to find him. They brought him out in handcuffs, and he avoided looking at me as they passed by the counter. The rest of the night was a blur. The police took my statement, and my boss showed up, apologizing for having me work alone. I was just relieved it was over, though the ordeal left me shaken. I couldn't return to work for several days after that, the fear and anxiety making it impossible to even consider being in that store alone again. When I finally did go back, it was only because my boss promised there would always be 2 people for each shift. That night stayed with me long after, though. I became more cautious and more aware of my surroundings. I stayed for another year before I found another job at an office where there were no night shifts or working alone. As a Twitch streamer, my days usually revolve around games, engaging with my audience, and exploring new content to keep my streams fresh and interesting. I had started 2 years ago, and although I wasn't part of the top streamers, I luckily had built a pretty large audience. However, in a way to push out new content and try to gain new viewers, it led me down to a path I hadn't expected. I decided to explore the dark web during one of my live streams. I've seen many videos of people opening up mystery boxes from the dark web or even into random creepy sites. It was meant to be a harmless thing, just something to entertain my audience and gain new followers. I began the stream with my usual greeting, "Hey everyone, thanks for joining me tonight. I hope you all get settled in as we're doing something a little different. I'm going to be exploring the dark web." My chat was buzzing with excitement and apprehension. I had taken all necessary precautions, or so I thought. I used a VPN, downloaded Tor, and even covered my webcam with tape, not wanting to take any chances. The first initial steps into the dark web were uneventful, filled with dead links and slow loading pages that tested my patience. My viewers joked about the slow start, but their laughter only spurred me on. I stumbled upon a seemingly innocent site that claimed to offer a collection of rare books. As a reader myself, I was curious and I navigated through its poorly designed pages. The books listed were bizarre titles I had never heard of, dealing with subjects like occult practices, forbidden sciences, and other somewhat interesting topics. My chat was divided. Some found it fascinating while others warned me to be careful, but the streamer in me couldn't resist diving deeper. That's when I received my first warning. A private message popped up on my computer against the background of the website. "Leave this place," it read. I laughed it off, assuming it was one of my viewers trying to add to the atmosphere. I joked about it on stream, but the pit in my stomach grew. Another message followed. "This is not a game." I hesitated. The mood in the chat shifted from excitement to concern. Despite my growing unease, I pressed on. I clicked on a link that promised access to a live auction. The page that loaded was chilling. Items of a disturbing and unexplainable nature were listed for bidding. I won't detail what I saw, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. My hand hovered over the mouse, contemplating leaving, but I was too late. The chat exploded with warnings and pleas to stop, but my screen flickered and a new message appeared. "You shouldn't have seen that." Panic set in. I attempted to end the stream, but my computer was acting on its own. I couldn't even shut it down. In my frazzled state of mind, I didn't think to unplug it from the outlet directly. I started getting more messages coming in. It wasn't from my stream chat, but directly to my computer. They described what I was wearing, the layout of my room, and they promised that this was just the beginning. I was being watched. The next few hours were a blur of fear and confusion. I received instructions from these messages telling me to perform tasks on stream. It was harmless things at first, like hop on one foot 10 times, but it started growing increasingly strange. My viewers were still unaware of what was really happening. They thought this was just part of the show. I played along, hoping for a way out, but it never came. The final message was a link to a live feed, my live feed, broadcasted on the dark web for an audience I couldn't see. The realization that I was no longer in control of my stream, my privacy, or my safety was paralyzing. The police were involved, but the digital trail was expertly covered. I took a break from streaming, trying to rebuild my sense of security, but the fear lingered. My venture into the dark web had attracted the attention of individuals who thrive in its anonymity and lawlessness, seeing me as nothing more than a pawn for their entertainment. The most disturbing aspect wasn't the dark web itself, but how easy it was for me to disregard the dangers of the dark web due to my curiosity and the want for more views on my Twitch channel. I know my situation wasn't as bad as others and that it could have gotten much worse, but I'm glad that I didn't. My advice to anyone curious about the dark web is simple. Some things are better left alone.